Hey everybody, welcome back to the Board Game Spotlight. It's Derek here, and I'm really excited for today's topic. We're going to have an Ask Us Anything, an AMA with Orange Nebula talking about Spirit Fire. So let's bring them on camera. Hey everybody.
Hey, guys. We are on camera.
You are on camera now. How are you?
We're really good. We're really good, Derek. How are you?
I can't complain.
Do you still have a sick child?
No. So the children are good. It hit me a little bit harder. Kids going to school, they bring back all sorts of germs. Ended up with bronchitis last week, but we're good.
Yuck.
Modern medicine is a godsend.
Yes. Well, good. I'm glad they're doing well. I saw a photo in my late night,
yes,
absorption of things, and
a lot of cuddles with sick kids. Yeah, no, everybody's good, and we're excited to have you on the show here. So for those of you who are joining us, please ask questions you have of the Orange Nebula team in the comments. We'll splash those up. Over the last few days, we've been taking community questions, and we're going to start with those. As you might have, I already see some comments filtering in here. You're watching this on Facebook or YouTube. Thanks for joining us. So let's go ahead and start with, first of all, we're going to dive in, right? Like if you're watching this video, you know why you're here. You're excited for Spirit Fire. You're excited about the team behind it with Orange Nebula. So what was the initial spark? Like what idea ignited Spirit Fire?
How would you jump in?
I think the very first conversation was, what would we do if we were going to do a dungeon crawler? Mm-hmm. And Spirit Fire isn't really a dungeon crawler, although it kind of has aspects. And then the conversation really rapidly evolved into, well, what if you just got the game and you receive this box, and this box was just you, and you got to create your character, and you got to like make choices that would differentiate you. So like when Tom opened his box, he'd have a different experience than when I opened my box. And how far could we go with that idea? We're very initial,
and
concept.
That is like half the fun. Where it's like, all right, you've got your box, I've got my box, or just I'm alone by myself, I've got my box. Like now I'm going to build this character, and to have that be a fulfilling experience before you even consider the proposition of like, all right, and now what are they going to go do? Like, oh, here's a world for them to go explore and quests to do and things to do. But yeah, the idea that just this box that is you. We literally had a white sample where we just wrote the word "you" on this box for a while, just as sort of a framing device for us. The very first thing was, what would an Orange Nebula dungeon crawl look like? But obviously where we've landed through the process is, I mean, there's still a map, but...
So it sounds
we'll
like
have to circle back and make a full-on dungeon crawl, but we can't help ourselves. Things just become Orange Nebula projects.
We can make a realm for this as a dungeon crawl.
So it sounds like the character creation part of this is a game within a game, right? There's a lot of meat within the customization of your character before you even get into the game itself, right?
Yeah, I would say that there is significantly more than the average game where you make a character. It is not, so incredibly robust. Like, I don't want to oversell that. Like, I know, like,
sure.
Like, my wife and I are starting a D&D campaign with some people in the neighborhood. And like, I have spent a week making my character, and stacks of papers and books. And it's like a full-time job right now to make my D&D character. Like, it's not that involved, but it is definitely more than like, I pick this dashboard and this card and this, and now I'm ready.
It was inspired by that. It was inspired by that feeling you get when you're rolling up a character, almost like you wouldn't sometimes in a video game. You have talent trees and you spend a lot of time min-maxing, and that experience is a lot of fun. So we wanted that to really create immersion before like or I guess association in the role play character. Before you even start the journey, you feel really close because you've made some decisions at the expense of others. And you've make it feel yours, like it has your fingerprint.
And you've done some activities that make it feel personal, So it's like you take these, I don't know, like for lack of a better comparison, it's like a personality test, right? You're doing like your little Myers-Briggs thing. And then it's like, okay, based on how you've responded to this quiz, like here's an array of cards and here's an array of cards that seem to match your character's, motivations and internal whatevers. Draft from those. And so these little drafting pools are created. So it's not just like, and here's your cards based on what you said, but there are some sort of like signposts and activities and things that guide you through and make it feel more interactive. So what we're trying to do with the experience, and a lot of it is still being developed, but what we're really trying to capture with the experience is something where you don't sit down and immediately say, you know, how do I min-max my character to do ultimate points and achieve ultimate points? Like these cards combo with this really well. Like that's fun and is very much part of it. But we want there to also be these little moments in the experience where you're thinking, okay, what is my character's personality and motivation and fears and driving forces? And how does that influence which of these cards I should be min-maxing with? And so we're trying to make it a little more thoughtful for you when you're playing.
Oh, I love that. And I like the idea of boiled down character customization. As a big fan of games like Skyrim and Baldur's Gate and things like that, where you get to start out with this character that you've created and assign things to them. I love that. So great answer. Thanks for answering that one. Let's go to another question while I peruse comments for any other questions we have there. But let's get into one of the things, like I would say one of the signposts for Orange Nebula from the very beginning has always been the community. You put community first. You love those who are backing you and supporting what you do. So the community journey is a big part of this campaign and unlocking content. So how big of a role did the community play in how you designed the game? Like, you know, when you started out building out this campaign, how did you decide the community's involvement in that?
Well, we always want community involvement in everything that we're doing. You are right to say that community is very much at the absolute core of our mission statement and everything that we do. You know, multiple times a year, we have these sort of summits with the team where we, you know, align and make sure that we're all pointing in the same direction and focused on the same things. And every time, you know, we revisit just how much the reason that we are doing this is to not only connect with the community, but to like empower a community to be a different sort of space for themselves than a lot of other spaces that grow up around like buying pop culture products or engaging in a hobby, you know, where it's like, oh, I'm into this video game and the only thing we talk about is this video game. Like, I think that's great. You know, I love Dark Souls too. But like there's, sorry, I said Dark Souls as well. I realize Dark Souls cool. Now I've triggered people. But the point being, like, if we're all in this community together, it means that we have some sort of like shared underpinning as individuals that drew us to all like the same thing. And can we go a little bit deeper and start exposing some of these greater things that we have in common so that the conversations can go past this product that we all were drawn to? Why were we drawn here, and how can we connect more, and what can we bring out of ourselves in the process? And making things at Orange Nebula is something that everyone on this team has chosen to do at the expense of other jobs with more money. Everyone on this team left a higher paying job to come here and could go back to those jobs probably tomorrow. Yeah, but we don't
hate our life
because we wanted the experience of bringing something out of ourselves that our regular day-to-day life wasn't facilitating. And we want that same experience for the community. And so we try to have that be something that's part of the whole experience.
I was just going to say, board games bring people together. So
right.
Board game companies should bring people together, you know, and you can learn from each other and you can inspire each other. And that's just kind of at the core of what we do.
I love that. Let's get into some comments here in the chat. So from Tony wants to know how many personal quests can be active at a time. And
Tony, first of all,
Tony's our favorite.
Tony is our we've had conversations about you in the office, Tony. You have a lot of fans. Tony is holding it down in the comments on the Kickstarter. He is there before any of us can get there, constantly with like very accurate and clear information.
I love that. I love when Kickstarter campaigns do that. That's great.
This is probably a different Tony that's like, what are they talking about?
You can have as many personal quests as you can manage. Although I think some of them will unlock others. there's a very open system here that we've developed in terms of the personal quests. Personal quests can be performed in any realm, so they're not realm specific. They're not tied to the stories in a particular environment. They're personal to you, so you can carry them with you from realm to realm, and you can progress them in any realm, which is what makes personal quests unique. I don't know if that
he's a bot. Don't tell Luna. Luna is a jealous soul. But yeah, to Mark's point, some personal quests will beget more personal quests. You complete this part of, so personal quests, often those are sort of like a quest chain, so it's like I complete this part of it, which then lets me access these next two parts of it, then which are a choice, which will I do? And then those kind of go over here. And as far as how many active quests can you have going at a time, which is a good question, because a lot of the personal quests are available separately as these packs you can buy. I'm going to choose to go on this personal quest. Right now, one of our game design principles is we like to start with letting people do whatever they want and as much as they want. We only like to introduce a restriction, because a restriction, generally speaking, is either something that the game has to maintain or you have to remember. And if we can just let people have as much agency as they want and it doesn't break anything, then that's a better situation. So right now what we're trying is you can load up as many personal quests as you want. You could have 10 of them sitting right there that you're working on at the same time. It is possible that over the course of development, we may find, hey, that is proving like people are biting off way more than they can chew, getting overwhelmed, and then not liking the game. We may at some point need to, provide some sort of like recommendation or maybe even a hard rule. But right now it's pretty wide open and no one seemed to have a problem with it.
Okay, that's great. That's good to hear. Thanks for those questions in the comments, and keep them coming as we continue.
Yeah, we have no short answers. Sorry.
No, it's good. This is all good. We're definitely gonna hit our mark on time. Nah, I'm just kidding. All right. So can you talk about the different Spiritfire resources and how they affect the different decks that you build? So for example, how might an awe deck play differently than say an intensity deck?
Yeah, there are 4 aspects of Spiritfire. Each of them has kind of a personality or a characteristic that makes it up. How it behaves, what its motivations are. For example, illumination tends to be a little bit more about awareness and mental capacity and having more options, whereas intensity is a little bit more about vigor and resistance and strength and power. And you will, in the game, it's so situational that you're going to be wanting to revise your deck as you go based on what you're doing. So you might find that if you face a particular challenge or a quest, for example, that you can prepare for, you might need to stack your deck to get through whatever physical thing you might have or whatever mental challenge you might have, or maybe it's a negotiation, and so you want to pull out all the aggressive cards and go with something a little bit more, has a little bit more empathy in it, for example. And so what you're going to find is you're going to weave decks out of these suits. Sometimes you'll have all 4 suits in your deck. Sometimes you'll want to go down to 2 or 3. Very rarely would you probably ever want to go down to 1. I don't think that would be super effective. But I don't know if that answers the question. It's a little bit, it's very situational, and your deck is going to evolve and grow with you. And the pool of cards that you can put in your deck grows and grows and grows, but your deck stays the same. And so you're just basically going to be using the things that you've learned in the game as opposed to what you've equipped to respond to the things that are happening in the world and to initiate whatever actions you want to take and wherever you want to go.
Okay. Great answer. So let's get down to something that, when I first heard about Spiritfire and some of the initial conversations, Mark, you and I had, was the decision that y'all had about no combat. So when did you decide there was going to be no combat? Was this something from the beginning, or was this something you realized the game needed as you started working on it?
I would say it was probably about 4 months into development. We're about 2 years in. And after 4 months, we're like, why are we even trying to do another tactical combat game? Like every other game is centered around combat. You know, it's rolling dice and mitigating stats, doing stat checks. And if we're trying to tell a story, how much more of a journey is there than just, you know, combat? And there's like 99% of the other part of the journey like isn't getting its due. And so we thought, well, what if we could just start exploring all the other things that happen or could happen on a journey without, you know, killing things and taking their loot.
Right.
It just like, what an opportunity. It is very jarring because, you know, it's so prevalent in every game that, you know, there's boss fights and you got to prepare and you fight. There's defense and there's health points and there's magical items and upgrading those magical items. And we originally, I think, went in thinking, well, we're going to do our version of that. And I think our version of that is to avoid doing that and go into all of the other things that you could learn to do that make you effective in living and in the world and doing the things that you want to do without being, you know, engaging in combat.
Yeah, one of the things we were finding is it just, no matter what was going on, it kept being, you've got combat and the other stuff, you know. So we wanted to have a whole lot of like, okay, well, you know, in like a role-playing system, you know, it's like, okay, I'm going to try to do whatever, pick this lock, decrypt this thing, decipher this thing, have this negotiation. And it's just like, all right, roll your dice. What are your stats? You succeed or you don't. And so everything that you try in the world is basically that. And then there's like this giant elaborate system for combat. And what we were finding is that like we really wanted to focus on like, well, what does it actually feel like to have a negotiation? And how can we mechanically represent that? And what does it really mechanically feel like to try to, you know, do something mentally taxing like deciphering a code? Anyways, we also need this huge combat system. And it just became like, no matter what we were doing, if combat was involved in the game, there was always just combat and the rest of the stuff. And as soon as we took combat away and got to make the whole game about the rest of the stuff, it just so had its own identity. And so it wasn't like this really like highfalutin bougie thing where we were like, you know, oh, violence, like we're going to make this really peaceful game. Like, you know, I just referenced Dark Souls. I'm playing Bloodborne right now. Like, we like those games, you know, we're not, you know, like morally opposed to combat in games, but this thing found its own identity and told us it wanted to be this other thing, and it is much better for it.
Right. And kudos to you for listening to that, right? In that development, in the design of games, it's very hard to find the personality behind the game, and it's even harder to move in that direction, especially when you have preconceived ideas, right? You know, you said 4 months into it. So that's awesome. So really excited about that. Question from Facebook. By the way, if you're watching us on Facebook, you can give StreamYard permissions to use your Facebook profile so that we know who is saying what. So this is from a Facebook user that says, what was a design roadblock you had to overcome? So what did Mark say? I hate this. And then Tom said, well, I hate that. Was there any inner office battles over anything in the game, or was everything pretty much, you know, how did that go?
The whole office is just what we call the screaming room, where we fight through these details. We have a high level of trust. Our whole team, we all trust each other and love each other and respect each other. And
which means there's
we don't really
barriers to appropriate behavior.
It's like we argue over a lot, but in a productive and positive way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Sometimes it has gotten intense, you know, at times, but quite honestly, it's not very often that's the case. We're pretty like-minded, everyone here in the office, and although we come with divergent views, and we don't always agree on things,
we're like-hearted more than we're like-minded.
Yeah, I would say that's true. And there are like innumerous amounts of roadblocks that we've had to overcome, and Eric, who isn't here with us, he's been a big part of what we're doing too. There is a lot of diplomacy and negotiation that happens in design when you have more than one lead designer, right? So we're all kind of sharing that responsibility. And so what you find, though, in the merging of those minds and viewpoints is that you have a more well-rounded product at the end. It just takes longer. And our MO kind of up till now has been to take years in developing a game and kind of trying to make it clean. And And we also like to take big swings and do things that are different, which comes with a cost as well.
Yeah, one of the things,
educational cost is probably the biggest one that's hitting us right now. Like, this is so different. People are having a hard time understanding it. And I think a lot of them are frustrated because, you know, it's different. But I think over the course of time, that's going to really kind of be minimized. And what we're going to find is this is just a new way of approaching games. We're not trying to say it's groundbreaking or anything like that, but we are doing some new things here. And I think that's what's in it for us, is we want to go into new territory and try new things and not just do another version of another game. So people say, well, this is just like this other game. I want them to be like, I can't compare this to anything else. That's our goal.
Right. Yeah. We one of the things we talk about often is that we realize, like, hey, we had a playable version of this game at 8 months, and again at 12 months, and then at 16 months, and at 20 months. Like, we could have made 4 games in this time. Like, we've had a game that was decent and was done. Like, why do we keep burning it down? And we just have these really high standards, and we're not comfortable with, like, it just doesn't. It's not even that we're not comfortable, even though I guess that's probably true. It's just not. It's not fulfilling to us to release something that just, yeah, you would get it and you would play it and you would say, you're right, this iteration is 10% different and more interesting than those 4 iterations. I see what they did that was different. This is really satisfying. I'm going to play it 5 times. You know, like, we want to, you know, we're spending 2 or 3 years on each game. And what we're finding is most people have much longer relationships with those games because of it. And
if you're selling your life by the hour, doing something that you're passionate about, you might as well be proud of it when you're done, regardless of what anybody else thinks. And there's a part of me that's just like, I don't really care about the conversations to a certain extent, because for people who don't understand the game yet, because they will eventually, but also, like, this is something that we are proud of, and it's difficult. It's hard to be proud of things that aren't difficult. You know, if anybody could do it, you know, it wouldn't be worth as much. Right. So there's a threshold, though. Sometimes we overcomplicate things too.
And I feel like this is an appropriate moment to make sure that we acknowledge that at the start of this game, at the start of this campaign, the gameplay videos that we had planned were not. We didn't have those videos in hand. And so we had to launch without gameplay videos and scramble here in the office to make our own videos really quickly. And, you know, those videos are going up, and we did a written thing that goes up. But I don't want this conversation about, like, what we're trying to do with games to, like, Venn diagram over that pain point for people to think that, like, oh, they think their game is so unique that they won't even try to explain it to us. We want so desperately for you to understand this game and to see what we're doing and to be brought into the experience. The no video at launch was a very disappointing reality. Not what we had intended. Anyways.
No, I mean, that's it. It happens. It, you know, and it does. Let's get to a comment here from Marius. I hope I said that correctly. I apologize. Given that realms seem to provide a lot of quest discovery and opportunities to complete different personal quests, any goals of how many realms will be released over the course of maybe a year, like in the future? Do you have any kind of ideas, or not yet?
We liken this to, like, planet boxes and Unsettled. Unsettled has a similar model where every time you play Unsettled, you go to a different planet and it has its own stories. The realms in Spiritfire have a lot more game time and a lot more intricate integrated systems that are very taxing to design. And we have designed this game to be as small and compact as possible so that we can try to keep the cost down for people and the shipping cost down. But the amount of labor that goes into them is probably at least 5 times what would go into, like, a planet for Unsettled. So
is the amount of playable content in there.
Oh, it's going to take each one has a lot of gameplay.
One of the things that's sort of unique about the realms that's different from, you know, our planet's reference for anyone who has that game and gets that, but just other games in general, is the realm is not like, okay, here is the next batch of content to consume. There certainly is content in it to consume. Each realm has a whole bunch of quests and things to do and stuff to reveal and things to explore and all that. But almost more than that, one of the main functioning goals of the realms is this is just a place that you constantly existing environment. And in it, you can work on all your personal quests and other things that you are doing. It's just this new region for you to now go and exist in. And sure, it has its own quest, but that's not its point. Its point isn't consume me. Its point is like, hey, you know, I've been doing all my personal quests over here on the snowy mountain, but they just released this crazy, like inside the mountain realm, like, and I'm going to take all my.
There's another shiny thing that you might want to go look at.
Yeah, or just it's a totally
option,
new context to be developing your character in. And the realm, you'll never reach a point where you're like, well, the realm is exhausted. It is done. Like it is still having encounters. If you go into the woods and the woods have these crazy stone frogs that do things to your mind, like they are always in there, and you can always go and interact with them in ways that are going to help you on your personal quest and growing your character. And NPCs continue to exist. Towns continue to still be there and offer the things that those towns offer. So they just they are building. It's an open world.
They're persistent.
You know, so each new realm just expands this open world that you can continuously go and do stuff in.
That's awesome. So talk to me broad brush strokes here. General time frame to play through a character.
This has been a tough one because people play differently, and this is primarily a solo game, so it's go at your own pace, take your own time. You know, Eric, when he sits down, he might take 45 minutes to optimize his deck and make it perfect. And then when he does a quest, he's going to take 20 minutes to redo his deck, and I might be like, oh, I'm just going to swap these 2 cards out, and it might take me 60 seconds. Over the course of playing the entire game that way, you know, I might take 30 hours. My mom might take 80 hours, right? Depending on, and so it's a very, very divergent number. It's really hard to average that because people are so different.
It being open world makes it, you know, it's not like, okay, the average person will take this long to go through this narrative. Like, I think about like when Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom came out, you know, like the game drops and everyone gets on it. And by the end of the week, people are like, I beat it. You know, this was my experience. I really loved it, blah, blah, blah. It takes me like 3 years to play those games, you know, like someone else will beat it in 60 hours, you know, like how much time to beat, you know, Tears of the Kingdom. It's like, oh, 80 hours to do everything, whatever. Also, I play it for 400 hours, you know, so like what's the actual answer to how long those games take?
Each realm is, you know, the character box itself, the core box with the realm in it, the original realm, is tens of hours of content for sure, you know, at least 20. And the game rewards you for doing as much as you can. So if your goal is to go in and break the game and go as fast as you can, you will do poorly. So it'll affect your end game and some of the things that contribute to what you pass down to future characters, because this is kind of an ongoing thing that you can just kind of extend this. It's not really a legacy, but that type of a thought.
So 2 more little thoughts on this. One, what we're aiming for is for this to be, you know, it is a substantive experience. You know, it doesn't feel like, oh, that was over too soon. We also are like not into like this game has 400 hours of gameplay. Like 4 people on Earth have time for that. You know, like no one's realistically playing all the way through all that. They're just buying that vision, but that's not what their life looks like. And, you know, so we're trying to find this middle ground between, you know, like we want it to be potent and meaningful. We don't want you to have to grind your life away grinding this game. And so I think that's sort of like answer number 1 is what we're aiming for is substantive but potent. Number of hours being bigger doesn't mean better in our opinion.
This is the type of game
you get into like the qualitative versus quantitative stuff, right? Like
I would just leave this set up like in my basement on a card table and just leave it set up and just go down and continue over the course of a year or more. And just continue to progress. And sometimes I would be down there all weekend and just be like, I spent 9 hours on Saturday playing this game. And sometimes I'll be like, oh, I got 45 minutes. I might as well do another one of these little quests type of things. It is a big living open world, and you can just jump in and jump out.
The other foundation for this question sometimes is coming from a really different framing, which is this game has like a roguelike element where you play, you finish that character had their own story arc, there's a cap on that arc, but then but then you can start a new character, okay, without getting into all the mumbo jumbo of how that happens. But I'm playing, I finish that character, and then I start a new character, and a lot of what happens with that character is influenced by what came before. So there is sort of this roguelike thing. The world doesn't reset, you know, the world continues to move forward character to character, but a lot of, you know, your cards get passed down through a system, and the character creation is adjusted and changed and expanded based on some of the things that your previous character did.
Cool, by the way.
Nice. And so I think part of where this question comes from is a lot of people who really like a roguelike game are really interested in the idea of like, well, how often is this resetting? Like, is it, you know, then for some of those people, the idea that a character is only 4 hours, it would be like a selling point. Like, oh, because I like that loop.
Right.
And this is not that. It doesn't have that repetition that a roguelike has. This is more of you're playing a campaign that then leads into another campaign. You're probably more in the, you know, 20 to 50 hours per character and not 1 to 3. You know, so it is more of so there is that roguelike bit, but the more people talk about that, the more it gives, I think, inaccurate perceptions.
Okay. Let's talk about something you talked about there as far as like these characters. And so we have a question here from Snow Dragonka. Are you a human or a being that depends on either your choice or maybe the realm's possibility? So like, who is it?
Is the queen of our Discord.
Okay. All right. So dive into this a little bit. Like, who is it that you're playing in this world?
A lot of that is up to the player.
Right. Okay.
You're not selecting a class and a race and, you know, predispositions towards, you know, anything combat or even other necessarily stats. You are selecting, there's some disciplines that happen, there's a purpose to your journey that happens, but none of it has to do with what you look like, or even so much like if you want to be a half dragon, like you can, like that's something the story you can tell yourself in your head, and we're going to include like a journal. People can like make whatever they want out of it. There is, however, like the disciplines are aligned with human traits, right? So like the things that we know as human beings, the game is based on that. So,
and the discipline art does feature humans.
Okay, sure.
There are no, you know, we haven't said like these are the like 6 different species of sentient beings that exist, and you know here they all are pictured in the art.
Elves and dwarves, and trolls and all that.
So it is predominantly behaving on the assumption that you are human, but you could certainly.
There's a lot of imaginative things happening, right?
Bring your own thing to it, yeah.
Creativity, yeah. All right, next question we have. I like this one. So for both of you, do you have a single favorite moment in the game where something happened, you're like, that's it, like that was what we wanted to happen?
Over the course of 2 years, I would say there's probably been at least half a dozen of those. One of them was no combat. It was just like, let's do it. Like, why are we trying to build 2 systems when this game is about something different? That was one of them.
Or narrow one so that it can accommodate combat.
The other one that just strikes me as something that we were reaching for to do differently is the fact that as you progress, sometimes you're prompted to open up these sealed packs that are influenced and informed by the decision either that you just made or the dopamine that comes from that. Instead of like going and spending your gold, you get to open this pack. And then like we've got these character packs in the box too. This is another thing that I really like about the game. These character packs are like your development. Like, I don't want to say how you level up because there's not really levels in the game, but how you're adding to your abilities. And each character pack just has a conceptual word on it and some artwork. This one might just say curiosity. This one might just say, mesmerized or something like that. They're a little more consistent than that. But then you get to open when you're prompted to open a character pack, you get to open any one of them that you feel you want to for your character in the moment that you're in. And then there's something that happens in that moment, and that choice has benefits and it has detriments. Mostly benefits because you're learning something, but a lot of learning happens through pain and happens through things that are difficult. And so the game kind of is very rewarding in that way. Again, I don't want to get into spoilers and stuff, but that was one of those aha moments where it's just like, this is so different than a typical game where you just draw the top card and that's what happens to you right now. Like that to me is not really compelling. I get to make almost like an emotional mental choice. And then I have choices within that choice. So I open up this pack and then like, based on my wisdom.
Yeah, you complete the guru's quest. You help the guru and he's like, all right, I'm going to teach you something. What kind of thing do you want to learn? And you've got these 4 packs. And you're like, well, I feel like curiosity is something I want to develop in myself. And then you open that pack and then some more decisions happen. And that's just so much more interesting than, thank you for completing my quest. Here's the exact 3 cards that I teach you. Or, like it just, yeah. If I had to pick some things, there was a moment for me where we switched from, because the card play in the game has a lot of roots in like collectible card games because we are recovering Magic, Flesh and Blood.
We're recovering addicts of one CCG, right?
And when the card play went away from you needed to pay something to play the card. And we had a bunch of different systems where it's like, all right, to play this card, I need to either pay these cards or pay this resource, or this must be, this prerequisite must exist. When we went to just play whatever you want all the time, you have 5 cards in your hand, you can always play them. It doesn't matter. You just play cards. And like, as soon as we switched to that, it just felt like the game had like shrugged its shoulders open. It was like, all right, now we're alive. Like, and that felt really good.
We like being alive.
And I loved when we introduced the milestones in the game, which is when you complete quests and you complete encounters, some of them will have these special icons on them. And as you accumulate these icons, they have different effects in the game. So, doing a bunch of quests that favor this group of people may like have a negative effect on how this group of people treat you. Or, you might reveal a thing and it's like, all right, you've just encountered, these stone guys. Have you killed any other stone guys? Not killed. See, we go right to combat between games. But like,
have you interacted with them?
Have you had a negative interaction with other stone guys? And you're like, oh, yes. Okay, well, then they respond to you this way because of, so like the way that this milestone track can take all of your behaviors and have them influence everything else that happens moving forward just blew the game open as far as how complex the interactions between the different quests and stories can be. You can progress
some things and you can digress other things based on those decisions. So it's really cool.
Awesome. So let's talk about kind of like influences. So what did you draw on to create the world of Spiritfire? Do you have any real world influences, ancient, fictional, nonfiction, things like that?
We strive really hard to build unique worlds. So again, it's not filled with dragons and trolls and orcs and like kind of the familiar tropes that we have. And we try to build creatures and experiences and places that are as unique as possible without losing your entire footing for what's familiar in fantasy. That's my blanket statement.
Yeah, no, and that's fine. That's great.
It's really hard to pinpoint because every experience that we've ever had as a human informs what we're doing, right? So
I think it's I think my answer to this question is that it's less important what we're drawing from and more like the framework in which we're building. So, we do world building as a team in our conference room on the whiteboard. And the discussions we have are about myths, history, things like that, but not our own. It's okay, what is the origin myth that the people in this realm believe? And how does that differ from the other people in the realm? What is the history of this world? So we look at those sorts of things and establish those sorts of myths and cultural touchstones and broader things that would exist in the realm as how we build. And doing that ends up, so if there's 10 people in the room, we're all drawing from our own little well of like, well, what are the types of myths that can exist? But what we end up coming up with is something that just feels so much deeper than if we were just like started at the end point of, okay, what's today like? There's a village of people that are all craftsmen, like, no, what is the 100-year, 1,000-year history that leads to this village, and why does it feel and behave, and why do all these people in it have this relationship with the mountain? It's like, because they believe it used to be a bear, and like, okay, what does that mean? And so then the world building gets to have its own history and life.
It's about new territory. We want to eliminate the first thing that comes to mind, right? So like, you think fantasy journey, okay, I love Lord of the Rings. That's great. How can we make absolutely sure that nothing in this game is ever like Lord of the Rings? That's our conversation.
Nice. So before I have one final question, but before I get to that, I want to open the floor to both of you. This whatever you want to talk about, whatever you want to say, the floor is yours. So go ahead.
I just want to say thank you to everyone. We have a really, really, really strong community that is we are inspired every day, and not in a like, oh, here I am to say that sort of way, like truly legitimately moved by the community every day. And I know that there are a lot of new people to the Orange Nebula space on this campaign who haven't backed any of our games before. They haven't been part of any Orange Nebula experiences before. And we just want to say, like, from the bottom of our heart, welcome, thank you for being here. And like, we know that you have lots of ways you could spend your time and energy, and we take that responsibility very seriously. And like, you are going to get every ounce of our effort always to give you something special.
Yeah, we try crazy hard things because this is what we've chosen to do with our life and our career. And it inherently makes it difficult to educate and share. And like, we're taking big swings is what we like to say. And we just appreciate people kind of rolling with the punches, as it's hard for us to kind of explain something that's different than what people may have seen before. And also sometimes we just screw up, and sometimes we just are not perfect at everything. And so I love the grace that we see in our Discord and the grace that we see in the communities at large. And not all of it is graceful, don't get me wrong, but I see a lot of it, and that's really inspiring for us. And it makes us want to keep going, because this is not the easiest career path, in my opinion.
Very true. There are hurdles, but the product it's so satisfying. And again, the communities you build around that product are why we do this, right? It's funny, as a huge baseball nerd, there's a saying, for the love of the game, which I think translates extremely well into our profession industry, for the love of the game. And that's why we do this. So I totally get that. So my last question is, as a backer, as somebody who loves Orange Nebula, I want all the things. Is there going to be an all-in backer option for Spiritfire? Now, maybe not during the campaign, because I know how difficult it is to build that into a campaign while it's live, but Pledge Manager, like, just a boom, let me give you all my money for everything.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And we've been working on that for a while, and it's going to be nice and clean and simple and very informative. Yeah, as simple as we can make it.
Right. Relatively speaking. Yeah.
No, we know that people want that. We're just trying to chisel it so that it's, as informative as it can be, and a really good value as well.
And it's one of those things where we like to be really, really flexible with our campaigns,
Yep.
like, so, you know, what has happened, what we've released on this campaign and what the activities have been and what, you know, those sorts of things are never exactly what we planned going into it. We're not just like, and on day 3, this will be released no matter what's happening. Like, we like to be flexible and adjust and meet everyone where they are. So the work on an All In can't even begin until nearing the end of the campaign. So it's definitely a big undertaking, but it is one that we are doing, and it will be up during the campaign.
Very soon.
Okay. Great. That's awesome. Well, as someone who's been a fan of your work for a long time, all the way dating back to Vindication days, and with Unsettled being one of the most unique and fun experiences I've ever had playing a board game, thank you for that. I'm very excited to see how Spirit Fire plays out.
Well, thank you. Big fans of your work too, Derek.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
What a community you've built.
And Lizzie, we know she does most of the work.
Yeah, that's very true. That absolutely true. She would have been here if she could have made it. We just had some last minute adjustments that weren't able to.
Well, tell her we said hi.
So yeah. I will. I'll pass along the love. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. We really genuinely appreciate the comments and your support for not only Orange Nebula but for the Board Game Spotlight. So if you're not familiar with us, maybe you're watching this on YouTube or you were brought over from the Orange Nebula campaign, we have a board game community called the Board Game Spotlight. We would love for you to join that. We are striving to be a beacon of light in an industry of darkness. So yeah, so we're doing the best we can. And we also ascribe to the no combat. You know, the Board Game Spotlight's a no combat zone. So thank you very much. And Mark and Tom, thanks for your time today.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you, man.
Bye, everybody.
See ya.
Thank you.